Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Thank you, Race Hobbs. And yes, it is Peter Robbins. The show is Meanwhile Here on Earth, going up a few minutes late this evening, and three very special guests. First, a reminder for those of you that are students of the subject of UFOs. 50 years ago, come this November, in the Sitgraves National Forest in Arizona, a very large forest that covers parts of 3 states, a young logger named Travis Walton was taken by a fully articulated disc-shaped object in the presence of his fellow logging crew members. He was missing for 5 days, during which time not just the American but the world press came to Snowflake, Arizona to increasingly cover the story. When he was returned, it became worldwide news, has followed him ever since. Travis's book on his experience has never been out of print. He has gone on to, well, I guess it's fair to say, speak at hundreds of conferences around this country and around the world. Certainly do several thousand interviews, be the subject of a feature-length Hollywood film, an award-winning feature-length documentary film, and played a part in almost countless documentaries, television shows giving to the subject, and the like. I don't know of an individual who has had this kind of experience who is better known or more respected. Jennifer W. Stein is fascinated by and has been paying attention to the paranormal all her life. Her personal studies of ESP, precognition, and intuition have guided some of her most profound life choices. A UFO sighting in 1975 set the course for open-mindedness early in her life, as well as a healing from appendicitis when she was 11. She was drawn to study ancient stone and effigy sites like Stonehenge, Newgrange, Serpent Mound, and many others from an early age. As a result, she discovered the crop circle phenomena in the United States, Canada, and then the UK, publishing articles in periodicals and making appearances on Canadian and American television programs discussing this research. She has also traveled to many of these ancient sites around the globe with some of the top researchers, including to Egypt with author John Anthony West, Göbekli Temple in Turkey with geologist and author Robert Schoch, and many South American sites in the footsteps of Zacharias Sitchin. Always looking for clues to humanity's lost history, in 2004 and 2012, she led small research groups on trips into crop circles and archaeological museums around the world, as well as to other ancient sites. Stein holds a Bachelor's of Science from the University of Arizona. He's an accomplished seamstress, artist, entrepreneur, activist, organic gardener, Ashtanga yoga practitioner and teacher, researcher, meditator, 20-year MUFON State Section Director for Pennsylvania, and now for Arizona as well. She is a former professional event coordinator and twice served as the chairwoman for MUFON's national symposiums. In addition, Jennifer is an award-winning self-taught documentary filmmaker and has won 4 EB Film Awards at Open Minds UFO Congress film festivals. She is best known for one of her documentary films, Travis, The True Story of Travis Walton, which has now won 28 mainstream film festival awards. Rather uncommon for a UFO documentary. Our third guest, my friend and colleague Bob Terrio, grew up in the suburbs of Boston with his earliest interests becoming lifelong interests, including dinosaurs, space travel, nature, ghosts, UFOs, ESP, God, life after death, and many of life's other mysteries. He grew up enjoying art, photography, reading, model making, making music, and collecting music soundtracks and making his own 8mm monster movies and cartoons. While showing early talent as an artist, Bob's love of film won him as a major pursuit at the Rochester Institute of Technology. During his senior year at RIT, he produced a 30-minute 16mm film documentary about psychic phenomena titled Psyche. Part of the documentary covered the life and work of famous psychic Edgar Cayce. Casey's son, Hugh Lynn Cayce, was so impressed with it that he hired Bob in 1975 to produce a documentary about the life and work of his father. Bob's resume is extensive. Just to pull it together here, he has documented UFO experiences of Betty and Barney Hill, alien abduction experiences in film, and in the process recorded over 100 lectures from MUFON. He has worked with many of the top researchers in the field, including Linda Moulton Howe, Richard Dolan, Jennifer Stein, Stanton Friedman, Kathleen Martin, Travis Walton, Robert Butts, the husband of psychic Jane Roberts, and other luminaries in the field. He is very proud of being the cameraman straight through the 5-year filming of Travis, the True Story of Travis Walton, and is also associate producer and videographer on my documentary about the life and death of James Forrestal. Travis, Jennifer, Bob, welcome, and welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
To see all of your faces, boy.
Miss you. Miss you, Peter.
Yeah, I was thinking of you all. Well, I was thinking of you and Travis last week in Roswell, and expect that all went very well. Also thinking about you and Bob in that August, it's back to Exeter. The Exeter UFO Festival and Conference will be having its 10th anniversary, and the incident at Exeter will be celebrating its 60th anniversary. But we're here to talk about not just Travis's experiences, looking back on it with some reflection, but the events coming up in October that you all are putting together to mark the 50th anniversary, and where we stand right now in this extraordinary age of active moves to advance the disclosure process. Travis, can I ask you first, as we come into this 50th anniversary, we all know that life is filled with events that define it for us. Happy ones, sad ones, births, deaths, marriages. There are other things that define our lives that we hadn't planned on, that are kind of dropped into place. And looking back from this vantage, 49 and a half plus years since that happened, how different can you imagine your life would have been had you simply been in another place rather than the forest on that November 5th evening in 1975? Do you ever think about, how things would have turned out?
Well, yeah. To tell you the truth, it was I would have preferred this not happen, that I would have had a normal life going on with, my educational career and normal sorts of pursuits. But I've learned to cope, and somehow keep my regular life and matters concerning this event in separate categories.
Yeah. Yeah. Jennifer, would you kind of sketch out for us, as we're about to get into almost 2 hours of discussion, how this idea came about? We know we had a 39th and a 40th anniversary conference back in Heber 10 years ago almost. And this year is different, though. And give us a sketch on how it came about and what we can expect coming at us in September.
I'd be delighted to and so grateful to have the opportunity to share this, especially with you, Peter, because you were an executive producer on this as well. And I'm very grateful for your help and support on this film and on the 39th anniversary conference and the 40th, which wouldn't have happened without your help and Bob's as well. And of course, Travis's. He really got the soup pot stirring on this. So I just felt that I was catapulted to move to Arizona in unexpected circumstances during COVID. And I thought now that when I landed there, I got handed the job of being the state section director for MUFON in Sedona because there were no programs going on. So for 20 years, I did programming in Philadelphia, and I thought, well, I might as well do it in Sedona. So after running very successful monthly educational programs for MUFON for almost 2 years, I realized we were coming up on the 50th anniversary of the Travis Walton event. And while I had been reaching out for almost 2 years to the Snowflake Chamber of Commerce, to the mayor of Snowflake, to the head of the Kiwanis Club and other business associations in both Heber, Snowflake, and Holbrook, hoping that they might want to do a regular conference about the Travis case, just like they do in Pine Bush, right? And just like they do in Exeter and like they do in Roswell and McMinnville, all those very successful conferences. I had hoped that for Travis and his family and his community, they might be interested in doing this because they can be quite significant fundraisers when the community gets behind them. But alas, they really were not interested in participating. So I took it upon myself to say, okay, I'm in Sedona now. I'm running programs in Sedona. I'll host a 50th anniversary event because I think that these are educational opportunities for the public. And since we have so much coming out now on the UFO subject, I felt that these very significant cases, like the Betty and Barney Hill case, of which the Exeter, New Hampshire conference sort of circles around, not completely. There are some other events associated with that. But I felt that there should be some way to market because, as you know, both Peter and Bob and I have a huge amount of respect for what Travis and the other loggers have been through. And it's a great way to educate the public that, yes, this event did happen. Yes, there were 7 people involved in it. They all saw it. There were police and, search and rescue looking for Travis for 5 days. And there's polygraph evidence and tree ring evidence that is undeniable around this case. So it's a great opportunity to educate them and to honor Travis and to mark this event. And it's only going to happen once. That's the thing. There are many conferences that go on every year. We're not doing this every year. It's too much work. And it's too important to be in, it's got to be marked with very specific, small, intimate network groups of people who are coming. So there's only 165 seats in this small venue we're using in beautiful Sedona. And it's going to be 4 days. So it's going to start Friday night. That'll be all, and then it'll be all with a film screening. Not the Travis film, though. We're going to be screening Accidental Truth, which is the latest film I've been very lucky to work on with Ron James, which kind of discusses UFO disclosure and what's happened since 1947. And then after that, Saturday, we'll have a full day of lectures. Everything is up at sedonamufon.org. People can look at the schedule. Sunday, we'll do a half a day. So there'll be church services in the morning at our location, and you have the morning free to hike or to invite a speaker to breakfast or lunch or just enjoy Sedona. in some of the wonderful restaurants they have there. And then Sunday night, we will have a little banquet dinner in a beautiful area with flamingo dancers and flamingo music at Tlaquepaque. And then we'll close the conference with a very unique and special group with Danny Sheehan and the New Paradigm Institute. We will be a watch party, but we will see groups of people and very significant movers and shakers in the UFO field making statements about why disclosure on the UFO subject is insignificant and important. And then we'll have Don Schmidt, who will be one of our presenters. He will make a public statement with 165 people present about our conference and our participation. And then we'll close the conference around noon on Monday with the opportunity for people to go out and have lunch, dinner with people, hang out. So it's a really unique and special opportunity to really but that's just the conference. Then on the 5th of November, we're actually doing a screening with the Sedona Film Festival. So on the 5th, Travis will be honored there by the Sedona Film Festival. We'll do 2 screenings, 3 and 5 p.m.
Great.
And then a few days later, on Saturday, November 8th, we'll do Phoenix MUFON with a presentation. We'll screen the film because we've never done that with Phoenix MUFON. And then we'll have a dinner reception at the Arizona Historical Society with Travis. So it's really kind of spread out. And this may be the last significant event we do. We don't know. We'd never know what the future holds.
Thank you for the rundown. And we'll be coming back to talk about the individual speakers and their presentations. Bob, you obviously had a long time interest in the subject of UFOs when you connected with Jennifer and ultimately when she invited you to be the videographer of record for this documentary on Travis. Did you expect that you'd be working on it for 5 years?
No, it initially started as a project that was going to be featured at the first conference back 10 years ago. There was some discussion about taking some bus loads of conferees out to the site. And then there was some further discussions about, that may not be a great idea. Some of these people are going to be tromping through the woods and the bus might get stuck in the ruts on the roads. So we decided at that point to do a documentary that ended up being named Tracking Skyfire. And we went out in 2013 and spent 3 days with Travis and some of the loggers at that time, made several trips to the site, and ended up with about an hour-long documentary that basically started in their hometown of Snowflake and then went to the various sites along the way, the town of Heber, and up into the forest where UFO incident happened, and so forth. So all the significant events were created for this documentary. And then following that, Jennifer decided to take some of the materials we had shot for that and expand it into a full-length documentary, which became Travis, the real story of Travis Walton.
As both of you know, as filmmakers, this is an art informed by technology. You work with your head as well as your heart. And I wonder if when you had locked down that first, incarnation of the film running at about an hour, if you imagined that you would end up with not just a feature-length documentary, and I mentioned it in my introduction, but it's really worthy of note for a hyper-specific outsider subject like a alleged UFO abduction case, to win 28 serious film festival awards, almost all of them having nothing to do with UFO film festivals, is an extraordinary acknowledgement. Travis, when Jennifer started to first talk about this project to you, did you imagine 5 years later that you'd end up with a documentary that addressed so many misnomers, misunderstandings, rumors, myths, wrong legends, and put things on the record that gave anybody interested in this country around the world a better sense of what had really happened, as opposed to some of what you and Tracy Torme were really forced to do to derail the real plot at certain points. It really is a remarkable documentary. I guess it's hard to be fully objective about it if it's about you, but your thoughts looking back on it now.
Well, I didn't expect it to grow into what it grew into, to be so thorough and including things that had never been touched on yet. So it was much more comprehensive than anything that had been done before. And so that was fortunate to get some important points out there.
While I guess a lot of folks might assume that if you're tuning into a show like this, you know all of the aspects of Travis's account, the accounts that support his, and the general story, but that's not always the way it is. And you all were kind enough to supply me with a number of assorted images, most of which I'm familiar with. They're not all precisely in the right order, but they will take us through your experience working on the documentary, Travis. And if you could, and of course, Jennifer and Bob, you're welcome to jump in at any point. Please do. The original images here, is this part of the series that was originally done by Mike Rogers, Travis?
Well, I am not seeing anything but myself on the screen.
Ah.
I can see it. I can see
Okay.
it. This is an image of Travis looking up at the UFO, which is about the proportion and size and height of what the UFO was, how big it looked to him. And Mike Rogers did do these original drawings that then they were later taken by other artists and
Yes.
improved upon to kind of show a more elaborate detail of what he experience. So this is just another version of that same image. This craft was only about 15 feet in the air when Travis ran under it. Yeah. So you think if he jumped up or threw a rock, he could have hit it. It was definitely below the canopy of the tops of the trees.
Yeah.
And that's what this image depicts.
Yeah.
I think we just lost Travis. Maybe he'll be back.
He is back.
Good.
Travis will.
I was trying to see if I could get the rest of you, but it's
frustrating. We will give you an idea of what we're seeing, and you can jump right in. This checkerboarding in the huge space that the craft emerged in. I think you know the image or the series of images I'm talking about, where the craft is on the ground, so to say, and one of the beings is looking out with you.
Yeah.
Did you have any sense of the size or the scale of this interior that you had emerged in? Like bigger than an air hangar?
Yeah, well, I would liken it to something like a hangar. It was huge. And my main concern at that time, of course, was just, where are you taking me?
Jesus, of course. How could it not be? And in fact, this is an image of you being taken, assisted by the arm moving away from the gangplank of the craft. You know, I think when people try to imagine the unimaginable for them, sometimes you have a de facto sense. You just defer to, I'm just filled with confusion. I'm upset. My memory is all over the place, as opposed to, this is about the most super real thing that has ever happened to me. I am seeing everything. I am remembering everything. I may be in what is called shock, but I am observing. And can you give us a sense of what you were feeling or thinking at this almost undefinable moment?
Well, at that moment, my concern was that I looked upon this person that was guiding me as someone that was rescuing me from these smaller alien type beings. But in hindsight, I think it was more rescuing me from my non-cooperation.
Wonderfully phrased.
Causing me to resist everything they were trying to do, which I think was probably to revive me and keep me from dying.
Isn't it interesting how from the first public accounts of your experiences that broke in the news, those of us, I was really only just becoming involved in the work, although the first edition of your book, The Walton Experience, was published in 1979, that how anyone could go through something like this, and most of us, in theorizing, because that's all we could do, and I was certainly one of them, felt, perhaps this craft is Android. You made a quick move, it reacted, as opposed to, a being at a console pushing a button, so to say, and that it stopped your heart. But it took me some years in thinking through as well as I could as an individual, the logical thing for an intelligence to do at a moment like that would be, I'll call it the right thing. Restore this being to functioning and then allow it to go free again. And
well, yes, I do think the blast of energy was an accident.
yes,
I originally speculated that it could be some sort of automated defense mechanism, but later on, learning more about the area where this happened, that it had the highest frequency, second highest frequency of lightning strikes of anywhere in the United States.
whoa.
So I thought that perhaps it was some kind of a secondary discharge that electrical discharge had struck the craft, maybe even at an earlier time, and charged it with this, so that when based on proximity, my head was at the closest point to that craft when this blast of energy came out of it and hit me.
Yeah, and Peter, I've heard from other stories, reading over the years, that people who have encountered craft were warned by the aliens or entities not to get too close to the craft because of the energy field. So my belief was that Travis was crouching down behind some sticks and wood. And at that point where he decided to run back to the truck, he stood up. And that's the point where he got zapped. And I think it was, as he said, accidental. And I think his being taken into the craft for 5 days was their attempt to, if he didn't totally died or was in pretty bad shape, that there was an attempt to bring him back to a state of health.
Yeah.
That's my belief.
Yeah, I kind of go with that theory, but of course I don't know. I'm just my best speculation.
Because in the film that was made out of that Fire in the Sky, they gave the impression that the beam of light came down, hit Travis, and lifted him up into the air, and after about 15 seconds then threw him back. No, it was an instantaneous charge of energy that hit him, threw him back. So people who see that film, it's really a distortion of what actually happened.
Well, it was Hollywood trying to make sure everybody caught that. They weren't reaching for the popcorn and missed it.
Yeah.
John, I will say John Goulet, when Bob and I interviewed him, he had been in the military, and he said it looked like he'd been hit by a bomb or a grenade, or as if he'd been hit by a moving truck, and he flew. Right. It was very quick, and he flew back. So it was like a bomb or a grenade had gone off. They also all said that they felt static electric charge on them, and that their helmets started to raise up on their heads. They could feel the static electric charge building up. And then when the beam hit him, it was so powerful. They could, Mike Rogers felt it in the steering wheel of the truck. He felt it on his arm in the truck. The guys felt it in the seat of the truck. And it was like this huge electrical, discharge. So,
it's so ironic when we run through details like this of such a significant event, one that we're familiar with from years on and off of study, research, investigation. A small detail may color or emblemize the whole moment. I don't remember who said it, but it was after you had landed, Travis, one of the crew, I think, said it looked like, at least momentarily, steam was coming off of your body. That's just, for me, a very chilling thought. And one, in a high shock event like that, I might associate with somebody having just been killed or something. That's highly dramatic.
Yeah, they said they thought it had killed me because the violence was so powerful and threw me so far that some people have commented that when the crew fled, that they were being cowardly, and I said no. Actually, I think Mike Rogers was doing the responsible thing. When crew members were screaming at him, "Get this will be moving, let's get us out of here."
Yeah.
That his responsibility was to protect the lives of the rest of the crew.
I couldn't agree with you more. And whatever Mike has gone through in his life with self-recrimination or whatever, I'd like to think that in that moment, any of us would think of the greater good, and just to get these people the hell out of here. And then again, that moment of, what am I doing? And we need to go back. This is our friend. To be so pulled emotionally and know that you're not overreacting, to put it mildly. Your life may, in fact, be at risk if you go back. At the same time, how do you live with yourself if you don't go back?
Well, in the Hollywood version, they had me making recriminations to Mike. How could you leave me? But that's just total Hollywood embellishment there.
I just want to jump in here on one particular aspect of this for those who have seen the film Fire in the Sky, which has some great filmatic parts, some wonderful performances, very special performance by the late, great James Garner, among others, a very favorite actor of many of us. And that it came down to an individual. At the time, this film was being made. The studio was being run by a man named Brandon Tartikoff, rest his soul now, who happened to be the head of NBC by chance in 1976 when a new show rolled into their lineup called Saturday Night Live, which he had nothing to do with and took almost complete credit for, and was kicked upstairs to become the president of Paramount or whatever the film studio was that did the film. And it was he who specifically asked Tracy Torme, our dear late friend and the brilliant screenwriter behind it and so many other features, to hook it up and do these creepy exaggerations because he wanted some new, kicky, super scary, weird ball alien abduction thing. You're on location already. You're shooting. And you and Tracy did your best to make him understand you didn't need to do anything to make it weirder or stranger. And he basically said, I'll close down the set. If you don't do it, or everybody's out of work. And he's dead now. And the film is problematic, but it has some great parts. And at the same time, they're balanced out in reality by the documentary. And it's going in and investigating so much of, well, what was pure Hollywood.
Well, Tracy was actually working on a rewrite of the script before he passed.
Yeah. I know that's something that we would all love to see.
Yeah, I understand Tracy's first treatment, his first version of the script was very accurate to the actual story, and he really wanted to maintain the actual events as they happen. And I think if properly directed by somebody with the right music,
it would have made a great Hollywood film, and
it would have been wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Remake's coming. We'll get it.
Yeah, we can hope some smart producer or screenwriter is watching this and they realize that there is an incredible possible remake here. And they don't need to elaborate the facts. The truth is just as interesting. Yeah. And if they stuck to that, and of course Travis's book is a great guide for that.
Exactly.
So that would be really wonderful. And I think for those who are no longer alive, we have lost Marlon Gillespie. We've lost Chuck Ellison. We recently lost John Goulet. And of course, Alan Dallas is gone. And so is, I want to say Dallas. What is his name?
Alan Dallas.
Alan Dallas, right. We've lost him as well. So, and as we continue to lose more of the crew members, it would be really wonderful for the real true story to be told.
You know, as somebody who was involved mostly at a distance over the time that you were filming, introduced you and Travis originally.
Yes.
I kept coming back in my mind over the years that you and Bob were returning to film, you know, the things that you'd report back that had happened, that were exchanged. Sheriff Gillespie played again, I think, brilliantly in the film by James Garner, was the sheriff who had to really make some judgment calls on this. And something happened when you were filming him off camera that still haunts me a bit. Gillespie, again, by then in his 80s, fully retired, a career Western lawman, a very particular profile in the world of men, who comes off somewhat sympathetic, truly, to Travis's character, played by D.B. Sweeney, in the film. And at the same time, when there was a period after you had shot him for the film, and correct me if I'm misremembering, Jennifer or Bob, but you asked him what, essentially he really thought about, Travis, and he said, "Oh, I believed him." And a double take was happened, and you asked him to articulate that. He talked about, well, what the culture was like at that time. You can't just be a sheriff in Arizona and say, "I saw a flying saucer." It didn't wash. It could hurt your career. It make you the butt of jokes, etc. But he went on to describe this event that happened in part with his daughter. And can you jump in there, Jennifer or Bob?
Absolutely.
Because this is extraordinary.
Let me insert something here that James Garner actually had a sort of a similar feeling. I was walking down the hallway in the studio, and I was walking past James Garner's dressing room, and he called me aside and said, "I'm playing the part of a skeptical sheriff, and I'm saying some negative things, but I just wanted to let you know that I do believe you."
Wow.
That was really impressive. And, on top of that, his daughter, and he's only has one offspring. I think her name is Jennifer Garner. And she actually took the trouble to phone me up after her father passed. Tell me that he had always regretted playing the negative character in that movie.
Wow.
And he was actually a government agent. There was another actor who played Sheriff Gillespie's part. So he was actually a character that was introduced as an outside agent from the government. They didn't say FBI or what it was. But so he was kind of added to the script as somebody who was not in the real situation.
Yeah. Of course, you have to create those hybrid characters sometimes to make a script make sense. But that's terribly moving to know, especially for somebody like me who admires the craft of acting tremendously, like most of us, has half lived in the world of film for my life, for inspiration, for so many areas. They become like good friends. And there are certain actors that we just become extremely attached to. And later in life, we often learn they were wonderful actors, but total jerks, or very good actors and really nice people. And Garner has always been remembered that way. And it's great to think of you and him in a moment like that, Travis.
Yeah, definitely. That was great. The Rockford Files, and going way back to some of the early Westerns.
Yes.
Maverick.
Yeah, very
I can jump in and address the original question, which I think is really important. So I was determined to try to figure out if either Marlon or Chuck Ellison, either Marlon Gillespie, who was the sheriff, or Deputy Chuck Ellison had any encounters themselves. So I went, I asked them both times when I was filming them. What I didn't remember, and I recently went back and looked at, was the fact that Travis and I did the interview with Marlon Gillespie. Bob wasn't there. It was the second year we were filming. And I went back out and got an appointment with him in Holbrook, and I said, Travis, you have to come with me because I got to work the camera and you've got to ask the questions. So I wrote out the questions, but before we started, once we were doing the sound checks and we got all the cameras set up and lights set up in Marlon's backyard, I said, before we start with our list of questions, I want to know if you've seen something yourself. And Marlon answered it on camera. He explained his own UFO encounter, which he did have with a niece. And that's live and anyone can watch it. I have put all of the footage up of Marlon and of Chuck Ellison. And it's at Travis, the true story of, Travis Walton, the movie.com. So there was so much debunking that has gone on in the last 5 years, right?
And we'll be talking about some of that in the second hour.
But since December 16th, 2017, when now we're having congressional hearings, it seems to me like these issues, that the big top UFO stories like the Betty and Barney Hill story and the Travis Walton case, that there's some kind of deliberate debunking going on now, trying to confuse people on the facts. So I thought it was really good to post different types of videos that related to that debunking, so people could hear it from the horse's mouth, right? Just let's let Marlon talk. So I put the whole video up there so people who are attacking the issue can go after it. Now, when I interviewed Chuck Ellison, he did have stories to tell us, but he asked us to turn the camera off. So I do not have his recorded. I asked him, I said, look, can I keep the camera running and I won't post it or ever use it, except in a postmortem situation after you are gone? And he said, no, I don't want to destroy the reputation of my family. But he told us 2 UFO stories he had in Snowflake by the train station somewhere. And I was amazing. Fire coming right out of this craft, coming right down to the ground and hitting a vehicle or a fire truck or something. It was an amazing story. I wish I could remember the details. But both of them had UFO experiences. And more than one.
It's so interesting. David Jacobs' phrase, secret life. does go a long way to describe the way so many people live with these experiences. And I think it's more one thing that we are seeing right now, and perhaps it is in direct reaction to the increasing openness on the subject, the growing general interest of folks who did not include this in their list of interests 5 or 10 years ago, that it's becoming more and more political, that disclosure with a capital D is not anything that people guffaw about anymore. It is a process that is happening. And the abduction phenomena is, in many ways, I think now under attack to a degree, because, okay, let's talk about radar returns and potential cover-ups and advances in technology, but don't tell me that these non-human beings are. That's where I have to draw the line. And so there have been a number of well-calculated attacks, irrational criticisms, and counterproductive media projects and documentaries, or parts of them, television shows, that are starting now to work even harder to, okay, folks, let's look over here at the serious stuff in Congress. At least let's pay it some lip service. But the whole people being taken by aliens, we all know that's silly stuff. They have a lot to hide and a great deal to answer for when it breaks open. So attack the messenger whenever possible. And at the same time, the world now has this outlet. I can talk about how serious I think UFOs are, and nobody's going to make fun of me anymore. Gosh, isn't things wonderful how much they've changed? Well, yes and no. It's played against us at the same time that it's moving forward. And going back into some of the wonderful images that you sent me, this one relates specifically, Travis or Jennifer, to...
Yes, this was an image we did trying to create what the craft looked like.
Oh, from the side.
Yes, it was a CGI graphic. We wanted to show the craft in the hangar when it was parked, and we showed this to Travis, and we realized, no, it's not exactly what it looked like. It had more like lines or beams coming down, that the whole thing lit up. And this was a little more, artist interpretation of rounded windows and things like that. But it did seem to sit on brackets like this when it was sitting in the hangar, and when Travis walked off it. But and this is if that next image you can show again, that was an image we did while we were working on CGI. So when Travis woke up, there were 3 beings standing around him that were not human and looking down on him. And this was one of the beginning artist, drawing, rendering and CGI that we were going to then animate, which we eventually did in the remake version of the documentary that we did for the 45th anniversary, because we had a rights issue with some of the archive footage. So these are excellent images. This is when we were reshooting this whole scene with Ron James in his studio in 2016. And that's the actor we hired to look like Travis. And that's the device that Travis described. He had some kind of circular half-round device of heat and light that he was being treated with. So maybe it was some kind of vibratory frequency or healing technology that we don't have yet today. It was his shirt and clothing were pushed up, and that's the only thing he could finally focus his eyes on when he came to, because he couldn't see. So whatever shock he underwent, it affected his breathing, his hearing, his seeing. He knew he was in a hospital. He knew he was being cared for. He could feel heat on his chest, but he was in pretty bad shape. And then these beings started to lean over him. These were the actors we hired to become the humanoids that came to rescue him. And these were the blue jumpsuits. And we are right there. Ron is showing drawings of this is what we're going to act out. So these were the scenes in drawings. And that was, of course, me and Veronica Vertes now known as Veronica Corbett, and one of the other guys who was acting as the doctor. But so when Travis woke up, and the guy in the middle played Travis for us.
Yes.
His name was Jeff Pennington. So when Travis woke up, he thought he was in a hospital looking at doctors with like doctor hats and face masks. But then as his eyes began to focus beyond this device that was on his chest, he realized, oh no, those aren't doctors. Those are big heads. Those are great, those aren't normal eyes looking at me. And the what he thought was the face mask was the nondescript, smaller, lower parts of these alien faces. So we acted out that we were the doctors. Those were the tools that when he woke up and jumped off the table, he went and looked at some tools. And that's the helmet we put on this wonderful actor. He was so kind. It had no ventilation in it. So when we put it on his head, he couldn't breathe. So we had to keep stopping and drying out the inside of this thing, and he kept having to hold his breath as we filmed it. But God bless him, he did it, and he walked Travis out. So this is animation we did of Travis walking into the navigation room that we called it. So this actor, Jeff Pennington, walked in, saw this big chair like Travis saw. He couldn't tell if there was anyone sitting in the chair. So he walked around the outside edge of the room until he could walk around and look in the front of the chair and see there was no one there. And then he saw buttons on these armrests of this chair. And he thought, maybe if I walk up to the chair and push some of these buttons, I can get out of this room. But as he walked close to the chair, there was some kind of proximity sensor that went off, and suddenly the room became a planetarium. But it was a 360-degree planetarium. The floor, the walls, the chair, everything became, and that one's so dark it's hard to see. I think it's image we did of the forest at night.
Okay. Once again, back to this hangar space and the way that it's rendered so that there's a fog or an allegorical fog.
No, that was a flat, straight wall. So there was a half round wall that you would assume would be like a greenhouse wall, but it was huge. And there was light coming through it. Now, we don't know if that was daylight. Part of it was blacked out. Part of the panels and the ceiling, you couldn't see light through, and part of them you could. So this was artist interpretation that originally Mike Rogers did. Now, there's something else very important at that last picture I will point out if we can go back to it. Yep. Notice that there are other craft there, but they are different. So the craft that Travis got off of is a disc, but the other craft that were there were egg-shaped silver, balanced without feet coming down. The craft Travis walked out of sort of had feet holding it up, and it was a disc. But the other craft, as Travis described them and as Mike drew them, were egg-shaped crafts. And I look at them and think, wow, that looks like a tic-tac to me, right? So, but then Travis walked down a ramp, walked across this tarmac, and then doors opened, and he walked into a medical facility. So if you look in the back of that room, there is a corner to it. So it was a semicircle ceiling, or a quarter of a half round greenhouse type like ceiling with a straight wall on one side, and they walked across a flat floor. There also seemed to be gravity because Travis was able to stay on the ground, on the floor. He wasn't bouncing like the guys on the moon do, right?
And so here's illustration of the two humanoid beings.
Right. When Travis walked into the medical facility, he saw other people like the man who was bringing him in, except they did not have helmets on their heads. They had blonde hair, a kind of bluish eyes, as I remember Travis described, and they tried to get him to lay down on like a medical table of some sorts, and he did not want to. He wanted questions answered, and they were not answering his questions, and they forced him down and put a mask over his face. The mask was not attached to any tubing or anything like we might think of as some kind of gas or oxygen mask, but whatever was in the middle of that mask seemed black, and it knocked Travis right back out again.
And a particularly haunting illustration, doesn't need much description. It's the close-up of the alien's eye, Travis.
Yes. That was a drawing I think Mike Rogers did for you.
Yeah, and I was really very affected by that. I did not perceive any sort of attempt at telepathic contact or manipulation, but that may have been as a result of my injuries. But
And
the important difference there was that the eyes did have a pupil and an iris. They weren't just a solid black. Some people have depicted that. And I speculated that perhaps having such large eyes that could gather that much light, they may have had some sort of sunglasses sort of effect that either biologically their bodies could cover the pupil with that, or maybe something insert.
that is where we're going to have to hold it for a moment. We're through our first hour, going into a 4 or 5 minute break. Stick with us. See you at the top of the hour.
If you want something fun to do with the family this summer, listen up. It's the ultimate celebration of the iconic sci-fi universes that have captured people's imaginations for generations. And it's taking place in Bonne Terre, Missouri. Special guests include a NASA astronaut, Disney artist, YouTube content creator, and characters from the Star Wars universe, also robots and world-class model builders. The Space Museum and Grissom Center in Bonne Terre presents its latest installment of Show Me Space 2025 with Show Me Sci-Fi Space on Saturday, June 28 from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The Space Museum and Grissom Center is located at 118 East School Street in Bonne Terre. Call 573-358-1200 or visit space-mo.org. That's space-mo.org.
The Unx Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full-spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the Unx Network website at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com. The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Unx Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unxmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unxmedia.com or amazon.com.
Meanwhile,
Brother Peter, you're muted.
As I was saying, meanwhile, here on Earth, Peter Robbins, we're back. My special guest tonight, Travis Walton, Jennifer Stein, and Bob Terrio, with audio this time. To jump back into the sequence of pictures that we were just looking at, Travis, this one has always haunted me in a way, and your descriptions of this room, this space where you're surrounded by stars. Can you talk about that a little? I don't know how easy it is to put this into words.
Well, I wasn't in a frame of mind to, be gazing with wonder. I was scared to death and trying to find my way and escape.
Yeah, of course.
And this,
yeah.
This image is the image of Travis being returned. And if you can see him on the road, you can see the two yellow lines of the road. But if you look at the top of the picture, most of the top of the picture is very subtle, but it is the craft that Travis looked up at. And it was so shiny, it was reflecting the road below. And Travis, it's in that reflection. He said it was a shiny craft and it reflected the road. So Mike Rogers did that drawing to depict what it was.
You know, Travis, I don't even know if you know how many times you've had the patience to relive this on location with friends, colleagues, visitors. And I remember you're pointing out the spot on the road where you came to consciousness. I think, was it your right cheek that was lying on the road, but you could feel, the road itself. Wake up, get up, orient yourself. You're not that far from the bank of payphones, and you called your home. Was that literally like waking up out of another state, or was it kind of a logical progression, that moment where you realized you were out of the craft, you were on the ground, you were in the road, you knew?
Yeah, at that point, I knew where I was, and I was still very traumatized by the experience. The adjustments that I made psychologically to it took years. At that point, it was I had just been through a horrific, frightening experience, and just seeing the lights down there, I ran down. The road was familiar, I'd seen it many times, so yeah. I knew where I was.
And did you get the sense, you were able to see it hovering, and then it was gone. Did you get the sense it needed or wanted or was waiting for you to start to reactivate before departing?
Well, in hindsight, I think that's probably what was happening. There was a light on that drew my attention from above. My face was on my arm, and so I looked to see where the light was coming from, but it went off just as I could look in that direction. So I don't know whether a hatch closed or a spotlight that was turned off or what.
Yeah.
But I went back to that spot recently with my son to investigate the possibility that the presence of that craft had affected the tree there. And for all these years, I was very curious about getting a sample of the tree rings there. And it's the tree that it was nearest has since died and been cut down. And I discovered that there was no unusual growth rings. It's only recently, this last year been cut down, but I didn't have an opportunity to, minutely, microscopically in a lab kind of a thing, just what we could see quickly.
Well, there was no radiation blast like there was in the forest, or there was no bolt that hit you when they probably returned you. So that's probably logically why I would think there isn't any unusual growth.
And, it took many years for the tree to die, and it probably didn't have anything to do with the presence of the craft because so many years had gone by.
Race, my esteemed producer, if you're listening, can we run that video clip of the tree rings? He may be out of, there it goes.
This tree here was a logging sized tree, and there's been no logging on this contract since 1974. So this tree we know was cut the year prior to the incident. So this would be a record of its growth up to, but not including, the time of the incident. So we have here these tree rings going back probably 150 years that show minimal variability in the growth rate here on this ridge. And that's in answer to the people who think that the accelerated growth that we observed in the trees nearest where the craft came down as being some kind of a natural occurrence. But this is a record of the natural conditions here on this hilltop for 150 years prior to the time of the incident. Here's a stump of one of the trees that was sampled way back in 1992, 15 years after the incident. And even though this tree is kind of at the edge of the area that was affected, you can still see a major jump in the thickness of the growth rings in this tree. The thinning would have had no effect on these thicker rings that occur during this span of time. Here there's minimal variation, and then all of a sudden they're vastly thicker. And we'll see this again and again. This tree was another tree that was sampled back in 92. 93. You can see that a core sample was taken out by making 4 converging cuts, and then the wound was sealed up with weatherproof putty to protect the tree, and that worked fine because the tree grew and was healthy until the fire came through here and killed them. The effect on accelerated growth seems to have been limited, like it went on for 15 or 20 years and then faded away. Now this tree was probably just a tiny little sapling at the time, but the accelerated growth part you can see here is still solid. After the tree died, the part that was not affected by accelerated growth, where the rings return to a more normal thickness, it rots, and this other part doesn't. This tree was actually growing and was about this big around at the time the incident happened. Then it had this period of extremely rapid growth, and you can see that those rings resist decay. And then after the effect slowed down, and growth rate returned to normal, you've got growth rings of a similar thickness here and here, the susceptibility to rot returned. But during that time of accelerated growth, you have resistance to rot.
That is, boy, that brings a lot back. Remembering being right there with you and others 10 years ago. And that last tree ring section that you showed, that pseudopoding out on the right, it's jaw drop. When you see it in nature and you understand what it means. It's understood, of course, that there is a byproduct from the technology of these things. I would equate it with an automobile putting out carbon dioxide, a byproduct that may not be healthy of, at least for some of this technology. And in Chernobyl, with the meltdown there, once scientists were coming back into the area to measure, we saw the same thing repeatedly. I think many of us think of radiation as something that kills, and it certainly does. But a certain amount, like in cancer technicians technicalities, when it works, you can attack or shrink with the technology. And some of the regrowth that has now happened in the Chernobyl area is surreal. It's off on its own in a way. And again, Travis, seeing those rings, it's, anecdotal evidence is one thing. It doesn't get any more physical than that. It's right there for anybody to read, and you're pressed for any other explanation for it. It's all analytical. You can count the rings and their sizes.
Well, the only thing that is affected is the thickness, the rate of growth. No matter what, a tree will only produce one ring per year. So it's not going to make more than one ring happen or anything like that. The conditions for that particular year were suddenly, the weather wasn't any different. There's no record of increased rainfall or temperature changes or anything. Whatever made these trees grow more vigorously had nothing to do with anything that we know of.
Yeah.
I will add, if I can, that
Please.
great footage that we just looked at was all done by Bob Terrio, when Bob and I were first there in 2013. And then in 2014, I went back to the forest and did a site review with Ben Hansen and Travis, because we wanted to kind of do an overview and document everything that was there in the forest, what trees had grown and where and what they looked like and what that hill looked like, just because we feared someone would come and mess with the evidence that was there, which has happened, unfortunately. We know that there was a big debunker in 2021 who was up there saying, there's no rapid tree growth, there's no evidence of it. Well, we went back, just Travis and I, with a podcaster and filmmaker from the Phoenix area named Patrick James. And Patrick and Travis and I discovered that someone has hacked up, burnt, and chopped those.
Son of a bitch.
Yes. But what was not shown or evidenced, because we didn't know it in 2013. So that film clip we looked at showed rapid growth, but what we did not know in 2013 is that tree growth was uniquely epicentric to where the craft had been. So if you had the craft in the middle over that tree, that Travis was standing there saying there's very consistent tree growth for 150 years. That stump was called we named it the National Geo stump, because National Geographic did something on the trees up there a while back. So the National Geographic film team used that tree stump to orient where the craft was, because when that tree was cut, that created the canopy that the craft came down over. So I did some research on tree ring growth that would appear if it was more light suddenly with a big tree and a canopy open because a tree was gone, would that make the other trees grow more rapidly in that direction? And the answer is yes, it would give the trees more light, but they would only grow maybe up to 10% more because they had more exposure to sunlight. But what we discovered is 33.3% higher growth rate, which matched the Chernobyl growth rate. That's
One of the
important to know.
one of the things that was a really a bright scientific moment, so to say, was understanding that all of the pseudopoding, I don't know how else to call it, the widening of the rings, decidedly always on one side of the tree, all of them matched the area in question. It would be
Remarkable.
laughable to think about somebody even considering you can't fake the
Rapid
reality of authentic scientific evidence, to put it mildly, except that many people did or tried.
Yes.
And here we come to a very important subject that has tailed the serious study of UFO UAP phenomena since the dawn of the beginning of the modern age of such studies, which is not, it's not being offering criticism or skepticism. In fact, as the four of us know, we have to maintain at any given point an arch skeptical point of view, not in any dramatic way, but in an objective way. If we simply accept, oh, gee, here's this case, it was like Travis's, we know that one's real, we've checked that out, so we'll just assume that. You've got to start again and continue to research. There are, again, skeptics who I think their skepticism is more a tool to deal with their own internal conflicts, problems, philosophical attitudes. If this is true, then everything I thought I knew is now open to question. I don't like it. But not playing games with language here. The difference between a skeptic and a debunker is a light year. A skeptic, again, is skeptical. And we have to exercise that very important aspect of ourselves in UFO paranormal research. A debunker has the intellectual arrogance to know that this simply isn't real. Well, how do they know this? For me, the debunker's mantra, it can't be, therefore it isn't, therefore it's something else. And my self-assigned job is to pat you on the head and explain it away in some pseudoscientific way. Sometimes these people are mildly entertaining and they just embarrass themselves. Other times they are terribly damaging, vicious, and completely unethical. The best known and most effective, really from the 60s until 70s until he passed some years ago, was a man named,
Phil Klass.
Philip Klass.
Philip Klass, who drew a certain amount of establishment support from the fact that he was editor of this well-known magazine at the time, felt that it gave him the right to analyze so-called the UFO phenomena. And he was one of the major adherents of this dogma, it can't be, therefore it isn't. The case, I think, in his whole career, and we know now he was not just a freelance useful idiot, he was in the employment of, and he went about attacking Travis's credibility, the credibility of the other men, partly in a book called UFO Abductions, A Dangerous Game, where he went after my sister and I as well, I'm proud to say. And he never once had the courage to face Travis, to ask him questions directly. He would do what cowards do, come in from the side, lob a grenade, get the hell out, hope that it would impact on popular culture. Unfortunately, he was dealing with somebody who never ignored, who came back and answered the question specifically. He was a character and a half. Some people found him entertaining. I found him incredibly obnoxious. but he worked so hard to try to destroy your credibility. Travis, we know a number of episodes.
The thing that I find really curious there, and I don't have a theory, and I'm not trying to hint about one. I don't understand why he never attempted to contact me like he did Mike and some of the crewmen. I mean, wouldn't you think that if he really thought there was some funny business here, that he could trip me up or say something he could twist to use in his career?
I think
the media could reach me by phone, and he didn't. That's odd.
I think you partly answered the question, which is that maybe intuitively he knew that you were not lying, and it was easier to go at the witnesses than to confront you, who never didn't stand tall on this. He was a weasel. He was a man of very obsequious character. He could be very charming.
Yeah, but even a sneaky attack, he could claim, he could ask questions, things. Even if he wasn't even talking about the incident, he could attack my character, or but nothing. To me, that's strange.
I agree. I remember Linda Napolitano, well-known abductee from the Brooklyn Bridge UFO abduction case, saying she had met him at a conference and he was incredibly charming and, chatted her up, even though she knew that he was doing his best to take down her case as well, and invited her, if she ever was in the Washington or I think he lived in the Baltimore area, that he had a small sailboat that he and his wife used to go out on, and that if ever she was in the area, he would take her out sailing. And she said she came away feeling, first, he was so charming that, maybe he sort of meant it, but there was a part of her that thought his intention was to drown her. And perhaps it was better not to accept, lighthearted, but not quite. So anyway, they never went sailing together. But do you remember the first time he kind of inserted himself into, your overwhelmed life at the moment of just trying to deal with this in general, with the media and the public and old friends and relatives and the UFO establishment, and here comes this man named Philip Klass into your life?
Me?
Yep.
He didn't come into my life. That was what was strange. Mike was in constant debate with him, very angry exchanges of letters and ongoing critique.
Come into your life indirectly.
Yeah, and apparently Mike was just chewing him up, but it did not provoke him to try to contact me, even though he actually tracked down Steve, who had actually left the state and changed his name.
Yeah.
Tracked him down, took him out to dinner, and tried to get him to accept a $10,000 bribe to say that this never happened. But
yep,
it's really strange. If he's going to bribe somebody, he could have tried me. I don't know.
There's also a lot of evidence, Peter. I think I told you this. I did research at the American Philosophical Society with Stanton Friedman, and
where his papers have ended up.
Right,
or
which
a good
is
number of them. Yeah,
which is in itself something that you need to question and ask. Okay, these archives are kind of like the archives of the founding fathers of our country, right? It's George Washington and
Franklin,
Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin. What are Class's documents doing there, right? When you die, it takes several $1,000s to archive your communications. So we went there to just read his communications. We were looking specifically for information about him going after the Betty and Barney Hill case and letters back and forth between him and Betty Hill. What we discovered is even though there were over 1,000 letters back and forth between Stanton Friedman and Phil Class, none of them existed in the file. None. So what we decided to do is Stanton said, well, I'll give them to you. You should have them in the file. So we brought these documents. Well, Stanton did. And I've never been back to see if they've added them to his file, but I doubt that they have. The other thing that was very interesting in reading his papers is the people that he communicated with. So there were regular communications back and forth between Edward Condon and the guy who was the president and the chief astronomer at Harvard, Donald Menzel. And we well know that those people were deliberate UFO debunkers. So there were directions back and forth in communications, right? And these people worked with the NSA and they didn't want this information out. So it's pretty clear, although there were not direct references to payments being made to him, there were, come spend the week in our yacht in the Mediterranean, and when we were going to get together, the dinners they would have and the vacations that were planned where they would mingle and connect. So they were big social friends. And I don't think it was just a social relationship. I will also point out Philip Class was not married. He was never married. Just keep that in mind. So many people think that, maybe there was something nefarious about his background and maybe he was put in a position where he needed to become a debunker on this subject or a disinformation person. Maybe he was set up. He might have been set up that he had to.
Interesting. I'm glad you mentioned Donald K. Menzel. He was, really the godfather of UFO debunking, and his position was extraordinary. He was the head of astronomy studies at Harvard. It doesn't get any more respectful in terms of the establishment. And he was the mentor, really, and the trainer who brought Class up through the ranks, so to say, acknowledged him, gave him opportunities. And we now know through the extraordinary scholarship and digging of the late, great Stanton T. Friedman, that he lived two different lives. He had the life of the respected academic at Harvard, and he was a member of the United States national security apparatus going back to before the National Security Act of 1947. A very connected and darkly so individual.
We do bring that out in the Travis film because Stanton talks about the fact that he came across papers relating to Robert Kennedy, and there were correspondences back and forth between, and Stanton looked this up at Harvard in those archives, but Harvard, I think, or Princeton, and he discovered that the letters back and forth between JFK and Donald Menzel were very interesting as well. And Menzel said, I can apprise you of more when we're properly cleared, which basically said, I'm in a secret service organization. And that was John F. Kennedy, of course.
Well, I'm surprised at how little interest has erupted from discovering after Class's passing that he had been under investigation by the FBI. I received 25 pages of Freedom of Information Act files on him, much of it, a lot of it blacked out. I would love to know what they're hiding, but the fact that he was possibly being investigated for sharing our military aerospace type secrets with our enemies. And people interested in that. You know what? I'm going to start carrying that file around. Someone mailed it to me, a researcher out of Australia.
That's something else again. I would call that not time sensitive. That will always be interesting to learn more about. It's, again, we're in this sort of split moment as we continue to watch this subject move more and more into the public realm and into the world of academia, official science, for lack of a better term, and politics. I still maintain that one of the most singularly important reasons for us to continue to do this work, to move this movement forward, is because in this increasingly fractured period of time nationally and internationally, this is one of the few subjects, issues that many people of very different political persuasions absolutely agree on, have room for connection, for mutual respect, and for shared investigation. We don't have a lot of that right now. And all the more reason that the fact this is coming up, the events we're here to promote in great part, this autumn, just around the corner. Geez, next month is August. The summer's really flying by. My gosh. Just quickly, Philip Klass wrote a number of books. He had a certain style of how to set things up and then how to dismiss them, quite mechanically. But he had his own following, and obviously a publisher that loved him, that kind of thing. A rather smarmy gentleman.
Well, the one document in the FBI file that I find rather interesting is when they turned their investigation over to the CIA.
Yeah.
What happened then? I don't know. Is there a FOIA ability to file for request documents from the CIA? I don't know.
Travis, our friend Bambi Dudley is asking a question here, and it's one I know a number of people have found interesting over the years. I think sometimes it's assumed that you go through a kind of experience that you have. Not only are you changed in terms of your memories, your thoughts, your attitudes, your picture of the universe, but your abilities. Sometimes it's romanticized, exaggerated. Other times it's very analytical. Do you feel that since your experience in 1975, that you have had recognizable some kind of change in your personality or self-perception, or your skills, or your talents, or that things have rolled along in their own way without a pronounced...
Well, I was very concerned about possible medical negative effects that never materialized. I was actually extraordinarily healthy during those years afterwards. And I was pushing myself pretty hard, just a workaholic to sort of shut out the memories. And that's one thing. I took some IQ tests, and there was a dramatic difference between one before the incident and one after, but that could be attributed to something else.
I remember at some point early on asking Mike Rogers about his drawing and painting. When I first saw the illustrations in I guess it was, I'm trying to remember whether they were in the original, the Walton experience, or whether they appeared in 1997 in the Fire and Sky edition of the book. But my first thought was these, and I'm, as a trained artist and for many years an art teacher, my take was immediately, these are, professional illustrations and well done and tell the story well. And I think I did something of a double take when I learned it was Mike. I knew some people.
Yeah, I was surprised. It was he'd never done anything like that before. And embarrassingly, it doesn't seem that he still has that ability.
Well, I questioned him about it from the point of view of if I had trying to imagine myself as a non-trained artist, had that kind of experience, and I might have said to myself, you know what? Life is extraordinary. I've been thinking about mine. I've always wanted to learn to draw and paint. I'm going to do it. My first thought there was, I'm guessing that in the Snowflake, Arizona educational system, that you guys and gals did not have a big budget set aside for art studies in elementary school, junior high school, and that was it something that happened to him during this thing that gave him the skill, which again I think appeals to many people. It's a romantic notion, and who's to say it's not true? But he made it clear to me that no, he realized that he wanted to learn to draw and paint better, and he set about teaching himself to do just that. And very well.
At least that he was highly inspired.
Exactly.
I recount this response that Steve gave. He used to come out and speak with me occasionally, and the girls would say, "Steve, how come you didn't get out of the truck?" And he said, "Oh, it was mind control. You know, they were trying to make Travis get out of the truck with mind control, and I was too strong for that, so it didn't affect me." I said, "Well, Steve, what if the mind control was to keep you in the truck, and I'm the one that resisted the mind control?" But that was just a joke. But I don't think there was any mind control. But
it's so easy to we're not in a regulated industry here. Whether one is a witness, an abductee, a researcher, an investigator, an experiencer, we don't have a governing body. If we were attorneys or medical people and we made an error intentionally or otherwise in a case, we could have our licenses suspended to practice the law or medicine. For us in the field of ufology, I believe the only thing we need to qualify is to touch your finger to your nose and turn around 3 times and hang up your shingle and get to work. People can always say, they can state their theory or say, this is what happened to me, prove me wrong. And there ain't nowhere to go except careful study, logical thinking, deductive reasoning, common sense, and dogged following of the trail. If we had $1 million cash each to equip a lab and do our work, we would still be applying our common sense, deductive reasoning, and critical thinking as our most important tool or facility.
I couldn't agree more heartily. There is nothing more than this incident that makes me believe that is those things that you just described, those traits, those characteristics, those things to pursue were the number one deficiency in the problems, and they were the number one solution to find a way to solve them.
It's, how can I say, it's funny when you look back on one's life. Imagine when you were young some of the dreams that you thought might come true, and then you see how things evolved. Some with high intention on our own part, other just the randomness of fate, being at the right place at the right moment or the wrong place at the wrong moment, and seeing the arc of your life go off in a different direction. I had always imagined that I would end up in, at best, a successful New York-based painter, sculptor, photographer. But behind that was the desire to live an interesting, creative, contributing life filled with interesting people and ideally getting to travel to places that I wanted to see. And I realized it has worked out very much the way I thought I had wanted it to in one way, but via an avenue that I couldn't have imagined or guessed at for all the money in the world. It just is not the way it worked out. And I think early on, Travis, I asked you the same question I kind of started with, to a degree, of what you thought you might have ended up doing with your life had this not happened. And after some thought, one of the things you mentioned that you thought you might have become a pharmacist. And I thought, well, why not? And that's a good career and a good life. And you certainly didn't become a pharmacist.
No, I thought about being a doctor. I had interests that way, and it's a long story, but there's probably reasons for that. My sister became a nurse, and I took the state test for midwifery.
Terrific.
Yeah, it was just kind of a spontaneous thing because I delivered my own kids, but I scored the second highest out of about 50 women from around the state of Arizona who had been practicing under doctors. And I was second highest, and the one who scored higher than me has since had her license revoked.
I want to get back to Bambi's inference about Travis having some influences due to this experience. And I don't know if this is still true, but a few years back when we were having some discussions about all of his experiences, Travis, you had made the comment that since your abduction experience, you had never had any major illnesses or sicknesses. And I'm wondering if that's still the case.
Yeah, that was the case. I was working 12 hours a day and pushing myself very, very hard. And I never called in sick one time, even though I worked all the holidays, all the days off. And still very healthy.
I think that can be taken as a side effect.
May our viewers and listeners understand that don't necessarily look to be abducted in a similar scenario for hopeful, similar benefits. Better to just go one day at a time and not be taken against your will for 5 days.
Good advice, yeah.
But who knows? Some of those medical benefits, we may be celebrating your 150th event. Well, some of us with our brains in jars wired up to computers and things, but the future.
Maybe just a side effect of correcting some injuries.
Very possible. Very possible. And what you just said, even when examining the extraordinary, even if the explanation is extraordinary, it may be the most mundane of the extraordinary explanations. Again, there's a tendency in this work by some folks, understandably driven by the romance, the drama of what they see as the core of this work, to always look to the exotic as an explanation, when more often than not, it's the most basic thing that's causing it. And if it's not that, and you've examined it fully and still not come to an explanation, looking at every level of everyday experience that might have caused it, then things really start to become interesting, because you have now built on a solid base and you can now move off into more the world of unexplained explanations. Jen and Bob also, Are you looking forward to any kind of secondary gains in putting together an event like this, where obviously this is an educational event, it's an historic event. A good UFO conference is also very social. I think when I look back now on my life in this work, I know I'll exit this life without having the questions, certainly all of them, that I would like answered, maybe none of them. And I'm perfectly fine about that, in that, at the least, we are fortunate enough to be part of an extension of society that is, well, filled with interesting people, many of whom have become good friends and close colleagues, or acquaintances moving into friendships that are irreplaceable. And for me, at times, that is more than good enough. I don't need to know the secrets of the paranormal universe or UFOs as much as being grounded in an interesting contributory life in this. And I see my associate producer has just made an appearance.
Who was my daughter's cat rescue. So Juno, hello, we miss you.
Yes, that's your stepmother.
Right. I brought Juno I arranged for Juno to be delivered to Peter. So it's great to see her. Him.
Well, he was named after a Roman goddess, and it has blown back in a way that is not germane to this show, but I know you all remember that great Johnny Cash song, A Boy Named Sue, How Do You Do? Being that I named him after a Roman goddess, I often walk by him, and for seemingly no reason, he just goes, whack, on my leg. I think he knows.
Yeah.
Good boy.
So
Otherwise,
we are looking forward to this conference, and Bob is going to be able to come out for it, which is really special. And as I said before, this is a one-off conference that we're planning in Sedona on October 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th. So it'll be a 4-day conference, but it'll be very small and very intimate because we only have 165 seats to sell. Because we're reserving some for, of course, the other speakers, and it's a small venue.
What is the venue, Jen?
It's a church. It's formerly known as the Unity Church of Sedona because it's painted purple, and it's been a landmark for many years in Sedona. It's now called the Global Center for Christ Consciousness. So it's a mouthful, but it's a lovely venue space. It's comfortable. It's cool in the summer and warm in the winter, and it's got great video, audio,
terrific
technology there at our disposal, and a great team of people who will be hosting people there. And it's going to be small and intimate because there's going to be a time and space in the schedule for people to connect and interact and go out to dinner together or go out to breakfast or lunch together. So Saturday night, we have no plans. So it's an opportunity for people after the full day to connect with people they don't know and go have a nice dinner somewhere in Sedona and chat about what you've just learned in more detail and share who you are and why you're there. Yeah. And then the same thing is true on Sunday morning. We have a free break because the church has church services. So then we'll go all day Sunday afternoon with then a lovely dinner in Tlaquepaque if people want to sign up for it with some flamingo music in the background. That's a lovely little space. We'll be in an outdoor courtyard, which is quite nice. And then we'll close off the conference with Danny Sheehan and the New Paradigm Institute's World Disclosure Day. So we'll be connecting with people from around the world, experts making statements on the importance of bringing forth significant UFO information that needs to be shared, and the fact that it is an international and worldwide phenomenon that people have experienced all around the world. Yeah. And the sooner we network and connect with one another on the truthfulness of our experiences, the better off we'll be as a world. Because as things are secreted away and debunked or dismissed that we know are real, the harder it becomes for us to advance in our consciousness and to make our societies more stable and more educationally important, I would say, going forward.
Travis,
we need to begin to uncover these things.
Any thoughts on what you're looking forward to most about the conference itself?
Well, I think it's very interesting that it will be, kind of on an intimate basis, more personal with, and many people that I've come to know over the years.
Yeah.
I think that's, again, such a big part of it. Not that we're related, but there is a sense of family
Absolutely.
in this work, no question about it. And I'm thinking again, next month, I'll be returning to Exeter, New Hampshire for their conference and UFO festival, of which you are all multiple veterans of, and send everyone your best wishes when we're there. Lastly, Jen, is there, have you guys made an agreement with a local hotel, or people just getting their own, reservations at places wherever?
Well, yes, at the website, if people go to sedonamufon.org and they click on the Skyfire Summit, we have transportation information up, great hotel information, multiple options, as well as Airbnbs that people can pick from, because Sedona is a bit of an expensive place.
Sure.
That's why we've made the conference relatively inexpensive. We started out at 165, I think, because I had 165 seats. So I think let's make that the price. And then we realized we had to raise it over certain significant periods of time. So it went up to 225, and September 1st, it will go up to 275. So if people are interested in signing up, they should sign up sooner than later. And yes, there are hotel transportation information pieces up there for people to link into right on the website. So we've made it as easy as possible.
And let's emphasize that this is unique because it's the 50th anniversary. It's the half a century.
Right. There isn't going to be another one. So if you want to attend, this is the only one that is ever going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's
No, come on.
we're not
I'll be there for the next one.
25 years from now.
If it is humanly possible, I will do all I can to be there. I enjoyed the previous two conferences so much. And the level, not surprisingly, of the speakers that you have lined up, besides the obvious here, is first rate. One of my favorite people in the work, Don Schmidt, will be one of your speakers. And what's Don's subject?
He's speaking twice. So he's speaking on Blue Book, and, J. Allen Hynek and that whole era and what that meant to secrecy and why transparency is so important now. And then he's also speaking on the Roswell incident, which he's been the best author on for decades. Because when you understand our history of UFO secrecy, it kind of began in Roswell, right?
That's exactly true.
The first day he speaks on Roswell, and the second day he speaks on J. Allen Hynek, which is
Outstanding.
really lovely because we just hosted Paul and Joel Hynek at the Sedona MUFON, programs that I run, which was wonderful. And it was a great lead up to this conference.
It was great to see Paul Hynek again, more than a month ago now, but at Contact in the Desert. Lovely person and bright as hell. I had the privilege of chairing a panel discussion on AI, which he was an important part of. We're coming into our last minute or so. Closing thoughts, Travis?
Well, I am having closing thoughts. This half a century thing, has got me thinking. Where do I go from here? The one thing that's kind of strikes me is people have been saying, "Why do you do this?" Now I'm kind of interpreting that differently. Are they sort of challenging, Is it rational to keep on talking about this?
You do it because you're asked, Travis, and because those people like myself and Bob Terrio and Peter have so much respect for your courage and your compassion for what you experienced and for what other people can't deal with. You are a poster child for this subject, and you do it with great poise and great articulation. And we ask of you to come forward. That's why you do it.
Well, thank you. That's it. I'm never invited myself. I just responded.
Travis was so mad at me when I named the film Travis. He said, "Can't you come up with another name, please?"
I would
on
never
that
name
note,
something after myself.
on that note, this 2 hours has flown by. It's wonderful seeing the three of you, dear friends, Bob Terrio, Jennifer Stein, Travis Walton. Stay well, stay in touch. Peter Robbins here. Meanwhile, Here on Earth is the show. Stay well, stand up for what you believe in, and see you next week.
Steady as she goes.